One of these films was an unexpected low-budget hit and introduced Eli Roth as one of the first rising figures in 21st century horror. The other was an experiment of sorts. A remake released less than 15 years after the original, which uses the very same script, but was brought to life by a different filmmaking team? But which is the best? I've got cabin fever, you've got cabin fever, we've got cabin fever, shave your legs. Cabin fever begins with a crazy old hermit who's been out catching rabbits for his dog. Sadly, the dog has been taken ill. Seriously ill.
No more fucking finals!
On the other side of the woods, 5 friends are arriving for a nice getaway among the trees after finishing college. After getting into trouble with some roadside rednecks and their bitey son, they reach their destination, a nice secluded cabin. Your horror movie bingo card is getting filled up at record speed. Campfire horror stories, horny teen romps, skinny dipping, hunting gone wrong. To cut a 90-minute story short, the hermit catches the infection and spreads it to the gang, after a violent encounter results in his carcass draining into the local water supply.
Cabin Fever is an unbelievably disgusting, violent, sick horror movie that's a throwback to the good old days of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and John Carpenter's The Thing and Halloween. It's going to be the sickest, most violent, disgusting experience anyone has seen in the movie in years.
Eli Roth was hailed as an exciting new voice for the genre, with Cabin Fever heralded as a breath of fresh air. 20 years on, a slew of other horror comedies in this setting were released, that lovingly rib at horror films and make references to previous horror hallmarks. Tucker and Dale, Cabin in the Woods, The Final Girls, etc., etc. So, the Seinfeld effect is in full effect. But Cabin Fever still manages to stand out, due to that very Eli Roth voice that the critics of yesteryear alluded to.
I wanted to make a movie that was both funny and scary, where, like in the style of American Werewolf in London or Evil Dead 2, where you're laughing one minute and just so disgusted you're laughing the next, and scared one second. It's like a roller coaster ride.
Tonally, Cabin Fever is as big a mess as what was left in that fucking bathtub. At times, it feels like an attempt at a straight and narrow horror flick. Take the opening credits, for example. It is simplicity at its finest, as the image slowly rots before your eyes, and the audio gradually turns sicker and more intense. It sets up the expectations regarding the on-screen decay that will be thrust your way, but also sets up a grim tone. Much of the gore is handled quite straight, stewing in the very genuine horror of the situation. There even seems to be some attempt at social commentary or allegory regarding horror's favourite couple, sex and death.
You use condoms? Don't worry, I'm healthy.
Connections between this killer virus and STDs are alluded to, but unlike gonorrhea, it never goes much deeper than the skin. Then, there's some wry stylings by Roth that inject some humour into the film, if that's the correct word. There's the contractually obligated scene of the teens hanging out around the campfire, reciting urban legends. In the hands of a lazier filmmaker, the scene would just consist of the kids around the fire. Oh, Roth knows better, and splices in visual representations of the spoken tale, giving the scene a surreal energy that helps distance it from boring versions of this scenario we've seen too many times before. There's a silliness to the affair, but it perfectly replicates the campy feeling of retold urban legends. What doesn't quite gel so well is when the humour exists in the real-time plot. Cabin Fever has a very juvenile sense of humour, which, depending on your opinion, is an accurate representation of college dickheads, or is just Roth himself having lowbrow taste.
One time I was masturbating, and my dog came up and started licking my balls, and then right as I came, it stuck its tongue up my ass.
Having seen his later films, I'd say it's a bit of both.
It was free pizza! Free fucking pizza!
If these characters were real, they could very well say such dross. And finally, on the complete other end of the scale, Cabin Fever also bleeds into full-on parody, like it's a scary movie spin-off in disguise. Recall the scene where the kid with the harmonica takes a hit and swallows the instrument. Recall the racist store owner. but it turns out to not be at all what it seems.
Hi, my niggas, how are you? What's up, nigga? What you doing?
Recall Pancakes.
Pancakes!
No pancakes.
Pancakes!
No pancakes!
When you mix it all together, it's a very strange product indeed, and I'm not quite sure how it sits with me. Maybe we should give the film and Roth credit for that. At least it's not cookie cutter. The pancake kid, Dennis, was already set up as a biter in the first act. When our gang returns to the store later, Dennis could have just snuck up and bitten the infected character, making a little jump scare out of it or something. Eli Roth is all like, nah, fuck that bro. This kid is just gonna run over screaming about pancakes. The martial arts wasn't in the script either. He just saw the child actor showing off his moves between takes and was like, fuck yeah bro, and integrated it on the fly. There's a certain reckless charm that comes with risky directors operating on their early movies on a low budget. Anything goes. I'd also like to commend Roth for not featuring the usual group dynamics seen in a cabin horror. We've got 5 kids. Paul is essentially the main character, and he fancies the pants off his childhood friend, Karen. Also along for the ride are Jeff and Marcy, an established couple, as well as Bert, the comedic relief fodder. In a more typical film, that will they won't they thing between Paul and Karen would be a major driving force, right through to the end where Karen would end up as the final girl, and Paul sacrifices himself for her, yada yada yada. Eli Roth is all like, guess what? Nah, fuck that bro, and lets Karen get infected first, and then Paul goes off and fucks Marcy instead. This straying from the path made the last 30 minutes quite engaging, as events turn more and more delusional. You don't quite know where the film is going. What could have improved the film's pacing and excitement for me is delaying the fact that the infection is spreading via water. Don't get me wrong, I love the moment where the camera ominously pans from the floating diseased body and up through the pipes. However, the same moment could have come later in the film. There's already the ideal space for it, where Paul discovers the body and figures it all out for himself. Making the cause more ambiguous for the earlier scenes would have been scarier and held my interest more, as there would be little puzzle pieces to be found. There's already bits where characters go to drink water, and then delay, and then drink it anyway. There's already the setup of Jeff and Bert competing to only drink beer for the entire vacation. This could have been a sneaky game to play with the audience, for them to figure out themselves before Paul stumbled upon the revelation. The only point left to make about the original is perhaps the most important. It is abundantly clear that Eli Roth holds a deep affection for horror, and the fun he's having working within the frameworks of the genre is infectious. There are subtle hints to other horror classics at every turn. Soundtracks borrowed from The Last House on the Left, shots that homage Evil Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, an ending that builds upon Night of the Living Dead's infamous finale, and so on. Cabin Fever has aged slightly, but it's still very much a modern horror. How then could a remake, released just 14 years later, be handled? I've got a fever, so can you check? Hand on my forehead, shave my legs. Cabin Fever begins with a crazy old hermit who's been out catching rabbits for his dog. Sadly, the dog has been taken ill. Seriously ill. On the other side of the woods, 5 friends are arriving for a nice getaway among the trees after finishing college. After getting into trouble with some roadside rednecks and their bitey son, they reach their destination, a nice secluded cabin. Your horror movie bingo card is getting filled up at record speed. Campfire horror stories, horny teen romps, skinny dipping, hunting gone wrong. To cut a 90-minute story short, the hermit catches the infection and spreads it to the gang, after a violent encounter results in his carcass draining into the local water supply. Does that plot sound familiar to you? Some remakes are greenlit because many decades have passed, and the original concept can be updated with stronger gore and modern outlooks. Some remakes are greenlit because a creator has a certain vision. Forget all that. Cabin Fever is a carbon copy. This is because they literally worked off of the same original script. There are a few minor dialogue tweaks, turn-of-the-century references to skateboarding are out, Call of Duty references are in. Epic. A few of the death scenes happen slightly differently, otherwise it's the same damn film, but with all of Roth's weird flair removed. So, is this a more serious take on the script? Let's have a look at the opening, shall we? No, I guess not. If anything, the humour is even dumber than before. Bert has gone from an American Pie side character to an insufferable lanky cunt. The others aren't so annoying, but are just so fucking bland. As I'm writing this, a day after watching the remake, I honestly can't remember half of their faces already. It feels like I'm watching a bloody high school adaptation of the original film, where I recognise the dialogue and know how it should be delivered, but the actors just aren't right. The whole thing feels off. There's a distinct lack of enthusiasm. The underage party scene is drastically smaller in the remake, and compare the scenes where Jeff and Bert identify the hermit they've killed.
We burned Henry. Fuck!
No, I can't believe we burnt Cousin Henry.
I know.
Oh, and remember when I said it would be lazy if the campfire story just held on the kids around the fire? Yeah. Hold on. This male character is now a woman. I'm in shock. There's something new. Break out the champagne, darling. There's something new over here. Oh, hold on, wait. This gender swap changes absolutely nothing in regards to either character or plot? Oh, never mind. Save the champagne for when we watch the Elm Street remake. I'm sure that'll be more worthy, right? Right? The other changes, at best, affect nothing, but many of them are a hindrance.
I fucking made it! I knew it! I knew it! I fucking made it!
Jeff's demise in the original is fine. You can see it coming from a mile away, but it still has an ironic sting.
I fucking made it.
In the remake, before the cops gun him down, he realizes he's infected anyway, therefore tearing out any edge the ending once had. Any new dialogue is as uninspired as they come. They asked a woman where she learned to shoot guns so well. She replies,
I have two brothers.
"Oh, real groundbreaking shit right there." Pancake's kid is no longer a kung fu master, but seeing as they shoehorned Pancakes into the intro with the dog, surely this scene will be more like how I envisioned it before, more serious, more jump-scary.
Pancakes. Pancakes. Pancakes.
No, he still wants his pancakes. I don't know. The inclusion of the animal masks, again, tired and overdone. I guess it's a reference to the Bunny Man, but it just comes across as lazy. And of course, the kid has to reappear at the very end, because it's shocking? Amusing? Anything? Again, I don't know. Ooh, what's this? There's a new post-credit scene, where a girl looks at Karen's holiday photos, which include her dying in the shed, and Paul finishing her off. I can't even be bothered to get into the logic of this, either in-universe or from the filmmaker's point of view. Speaking of Paul killing Karen, at least that scene shared the original's tonal imbalance. Is it supposed to be funny or upsetting that all his methods of killing her keep failing? With Karen saying, "Try again," in a completely normal voice despite missing half her fucking face. Followed by some overly melodramatic operatic nonsense? I don't know. Even when this film tries to homage other horror films, it falls flat. Here's a shot that looks like The Shining, using the same music too. How quirky. Get it? It's hard to say why this doesn't work while the original film's references did. Maybe this time it was too on the nose. This character going up to a redneck and saying, "Hey, deliverance!"
Hey, deliverance!
Yeah, that's definitely on the nose. Jesus Christ. The one and only worthwhile change in the remake is that Paul is no longer a rapist. Yes! Before, his wayward fingers were a bit unwarranted. At least here, it occurs during a nice family-friendly consensual frolicking. So, the big question we're all thinking is this. Why the fuck does this film even exist? Cabin Fever was never a huge franchise with a massive dedicated fan base, so there's not much monetary incentive there. The original series of films was still fresh, and only had its last entry, Cabin Fever 3, Patient Zero, just 2 years prior. The 2002 film was already stuffed with heavy gore, so it's not like updating a 1960s film about a flesh-eating virus, for example. No. The reason for this remake is because the director came up to Eli Roth and said, "I would like to remake Cabin Fever using the exact same script." That's it. From Roth's point of view, I get it. It could be an interesting experiment to see how someone else tackled your work, and see how it differs, what works better, what works worse. He compared it to a play starting a new run with a different cast. The problem is, it's not a very interesting experiment for the rest of us. Anyway, it's that time of the review where I compare elements of the two films in order to crown a winner. I wonder which film will be the victor today. Best cast. While the original group of kids aren't anything to write home about, the new kids range from dishwater doll to "I want to kill you myself, you prick." The rednecks in the original are certainly superior too. So, the original wins this one. Best kill. I'm almost cheating with this one, because it's a few deaths, not just one. In the original, the rednecks begin a short-lived assault on the cabin. On first watch, I was surprised that Bert didn't get his shot off, and instead got shot off. I also loved me an accidental own goal, so to speak, so what follows next gave me a kick. The impaling with the stick is a natural outcome to end the battle, and to further Paul's rapid descent. Best film. I can't be bothered with any more categories. We all know my opinions on this one. So, the best film is Cabin Fever 2002, without a fucking doubt. Let me know your opinions in the comments below. Are you a fan of Mr. Roth? Are you suing the producers of this remake for valuable lost time that you could never ever get back?